Thank you for joining For You Lab Life. I'm Alex Maris with Precision Optical Group. And again, we have Mark Clark joining us with Modern Optical. He is, again, our ABOC that we try to include on each of these trainings so that we stick to our core ideas of having someone that is involved on the ECP side, on the lab side, and has a ton of optical knowledge to add to all of our discussions. Today, we're also including Chris Foley from Quantum. Today, we're talking about all different kinds of coatings, AR coatings, mirror coatings, scratch coatings. But the first item that we are going to focus on is AR coating, and we're going to try to stick to spin coating as it's typically what you're running into at most labs nowadays, especially if you're talking about their in-house branded AR that we're going to try to focus on today and some of the benefits of those ARs today. So Mark, if you want to go ahead and start the first discussion on AR.
Sure. Yeah. When we talk about AR, one of the things that I like to bring up is that it's not just hype. The big branded optical companies that are out there, they invent something brand new every couple of months so that their reps have something to talk about. And sometimes, that kind of just washes over us and we start to think that that's what everything is, that it's just something to sell. But the truth is AR coatings are not just hype. Sometimes they'll relaunch the same progressive design a million times and act like it's the greatest brand newest thing ever, but really anti-reflective coating doesn't fall in that group. It really has value. It's on all kinds of instruments outside of just the eye care industry. It's a must-have in all types of optics, whether it's cameras, microscopes, telescopes. I know that the folks at Quantum Optical have been involved in a lot of other types of coatings and have units that do lots of other types of coatings. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, we actually even have a coating that's on Mars. It's on the Mars rover.
Yeah,
so
that's
just
incredible.
One made it one time. We didn't realize we're only making it one time, but yep, we have them on a number of different places. We do a lot of augmented reality stuff, so it just depends, but a lot of it ophthalmic.
Yeah, and it really has its place for sure in eye care. I mean, if that doesn't do it for you, there certainly is a place for it in eye care when you compare what I've got on here, some cheap readers, to what Alex has on and Chris has on. It definitely has a place, definitely has a purpose in eyewear.
Yeah, and Mark, the biggest thing that we hear from our customers on the lab standpoint is we get a lot of frustration from those early customers that experienced AR right when it was released. And it's not a secret that AR wasn't the greatest when it first came out. So there's some bad blood on that aspect, and we run into it every day. Our customers are afraid that the coating is going to, come off too early. They're afraid of their customers being angry. And what we just discussed is exactly what we tell them. I mean, the same coating that's going on your eyewear is on Mars right now.
It's not in the respects of what used to be a coating, and I was a part of that when it first came out. We all had AR stripper in our office, and for $20 we would strip your AR coating off because it was just something slapped on without any rhyme, reason, or science behind how it actually should stick. And we were stripping it off as a coating. But you can't take AR stripper to what we have now and expect to still have a lens, because it is cooked in there, which we'll get to a little bit later when we dig into the process. But it really is a treatment to the lens more than it is a coating. We think of coating, we think of paint flaking off an 84 Chevette. That's
Right.
not what it is anymore. So,
Right.
as we move, forward, we want to address some of the nomenclature. Anti-glare is one that gets thrown around just because it's hard for customers to understand what we're talking about sometimes, but it's really not. That gives kind of the wrong context. I mean, if you want to call it that, you can call it that, but it really is an anti-reflective coating. And today we're going to talk about anti-reflective, and we're going to talk about mirrors, which are creating reflection. And there's a purpose for creating reflection and purposes for reducing reflection. But you know, I think some of the bad blood you mentioned about AR coatings is when it first came out, there was all this marketing how it was this nighttime driving miracle. And so many customers came back and said, I bought that. It didn't do anything for me at night. And not that it won't do something, but that's really not its core competency, I guess, its strength. And so setting the right expectations about what this is, glare has a lot of sources. When people would come into my office and say, I struggle to drive at night, and I'm like, okay, what's your windshield look like? Let me look at your glasses and see how scratched and dirty they are. Do you have cataracts? All of these things are when you think of the glare you see. There's a difference between glare you see and the glare that everybody else sees. These are different issues, and they have different ramifications, which we'll sort out a little bit later. But really educate your patient. Can a good coating, today's coating, which makes the lens harder, tougher, easier to clean, can that reduce some glare? For sure, for sure. But when we speak of the actual property of anti-reflective, that's not the property that we're speaking of as far as you seeing glare out there, different property. So confusion comes in there a lot of times, but become someone who educates the customer. Those customers become super loyal. I mean, when you sit down and tell them, no, 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 I know they told you this at America's Best. I know they told you this at whatever, wherever, but then all of a sudden you become the expert when you explain to them exactly how it works. And you get loyalty and more sales. And that's good for everybody on the call. So we want to dispel some of those myths and stuff today, and myths surrounding various types of coatings we'll get to later as well. But we talked about kind of that glare kind of issue, and glare on the lens versus glare that you see, and how can these affect optics and how can these affect your experience. And so reflection, when we look at the paths of light, you see that little arrow bouncing off there. Reflection is one path that light takes, and we've talked about this in the past, but it's 5% per side. And that's why the camera people are all about it, because sometimes they have 5, 6 lenses stacked up. And if you lose 5% per thing, or maybe you're just somebody at home and you've got your glasses on and you're looking through a windshield, or you've got your glasses on, you're looking through binoculars, it's 5% per surface, and it just keeps adding up. So as you get older, I've found out the more light you need for everything. My dad used to yell at me, "Why are you reading in the dark?" Because I had young eyes, I could read in the dark. But I'm at a point now where I get more farsighted in the dark and I can't read anymore. So light matters, and AR reduces that down to an insignificant number that's bounced back off. So when I've got these on, that all that light you're seeing is light I'm losing. And when I lose that light, that makes it harder for me to read, harder for me to focus, etc. The next path is transmission. Transmission, super important because we need that for refraction. We need to be able to bend light and focus your vision. So we need that transmission. We want as much transmission as possible. There's always a microscopic amount of absorption. That's just the law of physics. the laws of thermodynamics, that everything is going down and balancing out. And then scatter. Scatter can be caused by a lot of different things. We see there in that last point, dirty lenses, scratches, poor ABI values. These are all reasons for a quality coating, a coating that makes it easier to clean, a coating that makes it less scratchable, lower ABI value lenses. Absolutely, absolutely put an anti-reflective coating on those lenses. They need it so badly. Their surfaces, when you look at them under a microscope after they've come off a polisher, you can see how badly they need a coating. So moving on from the 4 paths of light, again, I've given you my own demonstration there, but the incident light reflected off of a standard lens versus the extremely lessened amount that is reflected off of a coated lens, which is the goal we're trying to accomplish. Alex, that actually, I think that looks like you. I don't know. You have a set of Oakleys? Did I?
No.
I was just Googling. Images to come up with some, but that was the image I found there, and you get much more transmission, which is the goal when we're talking about AR coding. And from there, we get to the process, which is probably my weakness, because back in my lab days, we outsourced all of our coding. If you were a small lab in the old days, you couldn't afford to coat yourself because it was a multi-million-dollar machine and a room with all this stuff. And it's gotten a little more compact, I'd imagine, but there's a lot there, right, Alex? I mean, when I sell it to customers and they're like, yeah, well, how much can it cost to just dip my lens in something? And I'm like, whoa, hold on. This is a process. So, walk us through the process. These are some actual images from your coding units here, your rack, and I don't pretend to know what all these are. I think the first one might be the coding machine and the rack and the oven. You can walk us through all of the process.
Yeah, and I'll keep it really as simple as possible. But yeah, and you'll see, hours and minutes onto these different steps, and we kind of combined a few steps into one. But I mean, really, when we look at it, there's really 7 main steps when we're talking about spin coat AR process. One of the downsides, and again, it's not a secret, is that AR does take a little bit more time. And as you're selling to your patient, the benefits of AR, I still don't think it's a terrible thing to include, this is a better product, but it does take a little bit more time. Now, when we're talking about a little bit more time, we're talking, maybe an extra day, maybe an extra 2 days, based on what type of coding you're doing. If you have something a little more unique that isn't ran as often. But going through the steps, I mean, the first step that is, really absolutely critical that here at POG, we actually do outside of our AR department, but some labs I know have it included in their AR department, is hard coding or backside coding. It's absolutely critical in the AR spin coat process. But the one thing that's challenging with that and really adds quite a bit of time is it does take about an hour to cure that backside coating, which is also spun on the lens as well. If anybody's familiar with 44R machines, there's other backside coat machines out there, but they've gotten extremely automated. They used to be, used to have to put in 1 lens at a time, maybe 2 lenses at a time in a little box coder. So just in the last 2 years, we've taken down that, hard backside coating from, maybe multiple hours down to 1. So that technology is getting better. The one thing to keep in mind, with AR coding process is that these rooms are completely controlled. The rest of the lab can be, I mean, really in a garage, some are. AR labs cannot be that way. You have to have a completely controlled area, temperature controlled, usually has to be pretty cold, around 50 or 60 degrees. And then it also has to be material controlled. There can't be dust or anything in the air that might get underneath that coating or in any of the chemicals that we're using to do the AR process. So the first simple step is what we call just lens cleaning, which basically we take, very high percentage isopropyl alcohol, clean the lenses completely off. And that is a manual process. That's someone actually doing it. At our facility, I know there's other facilities that can do it, with machinery. But we really do that on purpose because we want to look at every single lens that's in the process. We want to QA it. We want to make sure that every lens is free of debris. And we need that because the next step is what's called the sonic ultrasonic, which is also a cleaning, and I call it etching. I think that might be the easiest way to describe it. But that process, and that's that first picture there on the top, that process takes about roughly 30 minutes as well. And simply put, what that process is doing is giving the lens surface something for the coating to actually stick onto. So a majority of lenses outside of poly lenses have actual little pores in the lens, microscopic pores. That's what tinting connects to. It seeps into those pores, but it's not necessarily the same process for spin coating AR. The coating that is going on top of the lens needs something to grab onto. So when I'm explaining it to someone new, I usually say, think of it as Velcro. The AR is one side of the Velcro. It needs something else to stick to. Or, if Velcro just goes on a flat surface, it's just going to come right off. It's just going to slip right off. Now that sonic machine does use liquid, different types of liquid. So, as we move forward in the AR process, you want lenses to be completely dry. You don't want any type of, water present in that process. You definitely don't want water in your vacuum chambers. So the next step is to dry all that moisture out of the lens, which is, I said earlier, we try to keep it pretty cold. That's one of the reasons why we keep it cold in this room, to try to get out as much moisture, as much humidity as we possibly can. After that drying process, which is that picture on the right there, then the next process we call racking process, which is simply taking the lens out of the dryer and putting it on racks that fit into a spin coating machine like a Satislow 380. So those racks that you see there fit directly into the chamber. Another thing to keep in mind here, this is also a manual process as well. And again, it's another QA area where we're looking to see if between the original cleaning process to this point, has there been anything introduced to the lens? Even though it's a completely controlled area, there still might be small particles, from yourself, from your clothing, from your hair that might get onto the lens. Any of that particles have to be completely removed before it goes into the vacuum chamber. You can see there that little blue machine on that lower picture there is basically just an air pressure machine that we use to blow off the lenses before we put them on the rack. And then, of course, the most important process, and you're at this point thinking, holy cow, it's not as easy as putting it into the vacuum chamber 380, but now we're finally ready to do that. Put it into the vacuum chamber. At this point, it really is pretty easy. You select, on the computer program what formula you'd like to use. You fill your crucibles with your chemicals, which are already predetermined, and essentially you're ready to go after that point. But it does take about 45 minutes each side of processing time. And that again adds quite a bit of time to the turnaround time. I thought that it'd be a good, opportunity here for Chris to explain, the vacuum and actual coating process of a 380. It's pretty complex, but I think it's good to know. Chris, if you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. Just on the whole process in general, what we're trying to do is marry up each coating all the way through the process so it's married to another, so it gets a joint bond between the organic and inorganic materials. By the time it gets to the vacuum chamber, basically depositing metals on a lens. So that metal becomes so thin you can see through it. It's like an inch of snow on top of the Empire State Building. So super thin at high vacuum. So in this case, once you close the door on the chamber, you need to pull vacuum. Otherwise, all that heat moves around and we want to control the heat so the lenses don't get hot. But we got to evaporate a metal. So with that, we're going to pre-clean the lens with the ion source just one last time to etch it after we've already done that once in the ultrasonic, just one last more safe step so you got good adhesion. Then we're going to deposit the materials based on the design, based on the layer structures on the lens. But basically, we're heating up that metal and evaporating it and pulling it to the lenses and then applying it on top of the lens. And you can see through it. It's super cool. It's very high tech. Like Alex said, you need to do it on both sides. So you have to take it out, flip them all over, put it back in, and do it one more time as well. So it is a process where it's a high tech process in the lab side of it, totally different than edging.
Yeah, and it's some just maybe dumb AR questions, but that high plus lens that ends up, we're trying to surface it micro thin. How does it get held in that rack? I see those holes that are all the same size. Does that take some extra labor, some extra time as well?
Well, it's a different ring. So sometimes you'd have a drop-in ring because when you're running through surfacing, 80% of your lenses are going to be a similar size. And then 20% are not. That's kind of standard optical. A lot of things the same, and then there's always 20% that's different. So we'd have a different ring that we would, with tension springs that would hold the edges because it's got likely some level of a knife edge on it.
Yeah.
And then that would go in the little circles that you see in the collet there.
Yeah.
Separately. So there's different ways to hold the lens depending on what kind of lens it is.
And then, I've heard of that drying process as kind of almost a dehydration process. Is that an accurate statement? Are you trying to actually draw moisture out of the lens or just get it as dry as possible on the outside?
Absolutely. So what we're trying to do, like Alex talked about the pores of the lens, we're trying to suck all that moisture out because any moisture, you're trying to stick from one film to another. And if moisture's there and it dries out, then you create a cavity and eventually that's how your coating can break down. So we're trying to get as much moisture out of it as possible. That's also the reason for the pre-clean once it's in the chamber one last time to eliminate any vapors or whatever's left on the lens. So lenses today have great adhesion based on all the technology advances and the understanding of, we're using inorganic and organic materials. Way back when 25 years ago, AR was on glass. So it was organic on organic. Well, now everything's not glass. So the processes have changed to match that.
Great. So, it's just to summarize that, it's a process. You don't have to know everything about it, but it's a process. And I used to get price pushback from customers. A customer might say, how come my glasses are this much money? I can buy a flat screen TV for that. And I'd say, well, the flat screen TV, it comes down the line and it's always made the same every single time. It's just boom, 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 boom. It's all automated. Your lens, somebody goes and pulls a blank off a shelf that matches, the curve that's needed. It gets blocked onto a blocker. Then your blank lens that starts as a hockey puck gets surfaced down to be the curves that are going to match your eye. Then after that, it gets polished. It goes, I walk them through every step, at least the way labs used to be when I was in a lab. A lot of that's automated, but it's still unique per lens. Then from there, you add all these hours of coding to it. It's still quite a process. You're paying for something uniquely manufactured for you. So when you're comparing price to a TV to whatever, is it uniquely manufactured every step of the way? Do you know? But the lenses are, and there's so much, and all of that surfacing and power and all of that happens before the coating. Then it gets edged into your lens, and if anything happens, it start over again. And they don't understand that. They don't understand the time and the cost. And even though it's all very high tech, it's all very individual and time consuming per lens because each one is made for each person. Moving on from there, some of the let you guys tackle some of the misconceptions about AR. And you mentioned that that what makes an AR coating is a certain type of metal, and I'm assuming that doesn't change. It's like a recipe. I've got a recipe for waffles, and I suppose if I want to, I can substitute my flour for gluten-free flour, maybe. But pretty much there's a certain type of metal that's involved, and that is going to be my understanding is a recipe's a recipe, and these ingredients go in, and the metal's the metal no matter what. That would be my understanding, but I'll let you guys tackle that and explain that further, because there's a lot of misconceptions about where quality comes from, what some of the equipment that branded is ran on versus non-branded. I'm assuming a lot of that is very similar.
Correct. Yeah, there's only so many equipment manufacturers. So the branded versus non-branded, you're using similar manufacturers. In the end, you mentioned the Satis 380 or the various different manufacturers. The box coater is the box coater. It's trying to do the exact same thing depending on manufacturers. That part is very similar. There's different purity and levels of material. So if you use an ultra pure high index material versus a not quite so ultra pure high index material, you're going to get a different coating. So POG uses the best brands available and make sure that their coating integrity is as good as it possibly can be, because it matters. If you use a cheaper material, you get a cheaper coating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that looking through, and I'm happy that there's 4 spots here, and these are really, we included this because this is what we hear from our customers on really a daily basis, these 4 points as to really why you're losing out on more margin on your sale. I mean, we want to keep that in mind. I mean, your office is trying to make more money off of your sale, and maybe your customer doesn't want to pay for something that is high priced as a branded AR product is. The first step on the top of this list is branded AR is better quality, hence the higher price. That I'm glad is on the top of the list because it's the number one thing that we hear as the lab. The branded AR is simply higher priced because it has click fees from the manufacturers. So a lot of people understand the fact that branded progressives are higher priced because labs are having to pay click fees. But there's a lack in the idea of anti-reflective coatings are doing the exact same thing. Labs are still having to pay click fees for branded AR just as if they were paying click fees for branded progressive. So it can be ran on the exact same machine. It can be the exact same process, same materials. The only difference is when you go to click the formula, you're clicking a branded AR formula versus a in-house branded formula. So that covers the second point. Branded AR has a better process. Third covers the third point. Branded AR has better materials. And then lastly, that we get a lot that is kind of a head scratcher for us because there's not a lot to say back to it, is branded AR is better because of the color. The residual color really does not have a lot to do with the actual performance or process of the AR. You'll see a lot of green ARs because there's more room for error. One thing that we didn't mention in the AR process is, which is separate from mirror coatings, is that every coating can come out a little bit different based on lens material, based on how, when the last time was that you cleaned out your AR machine. Many different things can factor into the color. So the first company, that grabbed onto the green color really only did that because there's a lot more room, a lot more, margin for error on that color. There's other colors, like blue that don't have as much, peach colors that don't have as much, but those colors definitely stand out to your customers, and might be a good idea to use in your office. But anyways, Chris, is there anything you wanted to add on the actual color?
Yeah, color is just in the eye of the beholder, just like any other color, right? So the green hue has a broader range, so you have a little more forgiveness, like you said, but it's whatever color we want it to be reflecting. So color doesn't matter on the actual quality of the coating. It's just what everybody's gotten used to. Because if you think about it, you shouldn't have any color. You're trying to you're not supposed to have any, so that's why your peach one is actually closer to a no color and probably more cosmetic appealing, and still have all the great attributes of a quality AR. That's probably a really good answer and solution for the opticians to use.
Yeah, and I mentioned before my theories on the color goes back to why some opticians just plain hate AR, and that's because some of the first bad ones that came out, and it had nothing to do with the color. It just had to do with the fact that back then they didn't know how to match substrates to the coatings. But a lot of the bad ones initially were blue, bluish purple. And so we got that stuck in our head, I think. And then all of a sudden, some branded ones come out that are green and they seem to stay on the lens. And so I think that stuck in people's mind. But it's like I can go to uh, Lowe's and buy a DeWalt drill and it's yellow, and I can go to Harbor Freight and buy some weird brand that's yellow and it looks the same and it's shaped the same, but I know it doesn't perform the same. And the reason it doesn't perform the same is because it's not even close to the same components inside. It's just made to look like it. And we buy into that a little bit. And Alex, as you were talking about why are we stuck on names, we didn't get stuck on names with materials, lens substrates. And I think because when there was before people were very marketing savvy, so we sold materials as what they were. We described the actual chemical components of them. The CR39 was a government failed project, and so we sold CR39 as CR39, and then we sold polycarbonate as polycarbonate. And so we generally assume no matter where you got CR39, it was CR39. No matter where you got polycarbonate, it was polycarbonate. And no matter where you got Trivex, it was generally going to be Trivex. But then when it came to AR coatings, the marketing company said, hey, let's do something different here. Let's not say that this is a two-sided hard coat magnesium ion. This is where Chris's expertise comes in, but let's not say what it actually is. And I used to give my reps heck over that when they came in with a new coating. I'm like, what are you processing it on? What is your process? How and most of them couldn't answer me. They didn't know. They were just told the same thing they were telling me, that it's this color, it's this. And so we're kind of left in the dark as opticians. We don't really know one from the other until our customer comes back, and who knows if what I used to face in Michigan all the time is we all burn wood in Michigan. And I didn't know if he got a bad coating or if he got too close to his wood stove throwing that log in and it just went, you know, I don't know. I don't know what happened there really. And so we're just in the dark. We don't know one chemical from another, and so much has changed behind the scenes, substrate matching and all of that. Nobody really came out and talked about it. So we just know that there's a new price point, a new name, and maybe a new color. So I think that has confused opticians in this realm. So, but I appreciate all of that. That was great information. And now we transition. So we were talking about how to make more light go through a lens and the purposes behind all of that. To now we want to reflect light. What's going on now? So explain, jump into mirrors with us, Alex. Um, give us the basics.
Yeah, and it's an area that we're expanding more and more and more with our really great coding lab Optical. And the one thing that we're trying to hit on today is a lot of the issues that we have with our customers, with the patients being unhappy with mirror coatings. But what it boils down to is everybody loves mirror coatings. I mean, it like you said, reflects away light, which is great if you're putting it on a polarized lens. It's kind of a double duo there for great optics. But outside of providing great optics, they look really nice. And Optico and other coating only facilities have put in a ton of work to make some really nice looking mirror coatings. But the one good thing about mirror coatings is that they're going to be the exact same color every single time if you're getting them from a custom coatings lab. If you're ordering them from your lab, they're going to look the same every single time. It gets more complicated when you're moving away from planos, like if you're buying, a plano from an online retailer, or you're buying, a pair of Oakleys or, Ray-Bans or whatever it might be that has a mirror on it. I mean, that you get what you get, but when you have a patient come in and says, I want this blue, I want the base color to be this, I want my RX to be this, that's where challenges start to arise. And that is where we run into a lot of confusion with our customers. So things to keep in mind is that if you are changing, and really, I mean, this is a rule of thumb, if you are changing the base color of your lens, you are going to change everything about that color that you get. It's going to change the mirror coating color. It's going to change your base coating color. So we offer a couple tips. I believe they're maybe we might have them listed here. But first thing first on the tips is ask your lab. Doesn't have to be POG or Optical, but ask your lab for a reference sheet. So a lot of labs do or should offer a mirror coating reference sheet where it says, here's your red. If you want this exact red, you need to use an 80% gray base. If you want this exact blue, you need to use, X% brown base, whatever that might be. And that way you can follow that base color so that you get the exact mirror coating every single time. Now and Mark, this is this is why we include you here, is because we as the lab don't always run into what the customer is exactly asking for. So our second tip is ask for a sample book. Most labs do have a sample book where you can set it out there and say, this is what we have, this is what we have to pick from. And then you can order it exactly how it is in the book with your lab, and it'll come out perfect every time. And then third, if you just cannot find the color that they want, if they have something that they have in mind, send a sample. Every lab has a match sample program. If they don't, they're going to use a lab like Optical that does. So yeah, maybe you can hit on what challenges you had seen from your customers in regards to mirrors.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of just setting the right expectation, because the customer has no clue. They don't know anything about this process. You as an optician, maybe you visited a lab, you've talked to lab reps, you have generally an idea, but they're completely clueless. They come in once every 2-3 years. They don't remember even from year to year what is involved. They may think it's like tint. Can't you just dunk it and add a little more blue? They don't realize what they're asking. So setting the right expectations, I think that sample book is a must for setting the right expectation, because they'll pull that Oakley or whatever off the shelf and say, I want it to look like this. Then you can hold that sample over it and go, this is what I know I can get you. Is this what you want? Setting, because a lot of times it's not so much it's not that they're just hung up on that. They just don't know. And if you can set the right expectations, if you can send a sample, if you can reference a sample, and again, a lot of labs have different names, for different things. You've all experienced, everybody's got a different opinion on what rose is. And I think that it's kind of a brownish pink. And if you disagree with me, I'm sorry, you're just wrong. But I mean, that's how we are about rose. It's almost as bad as coconut around the holidays. It's so divisive. You're either 100%, I love coconut, I hate coconut. It's the same with rose tints. You either think it's a brownish color or it's hot pink. Like there's no middle ground for us to come together on this issue. But having the same nomenclature as your lab, understanding how they reference tints, how they reference a 1, 2, 3, or is it 20%, 30%, 40%? Well, you got to be on the same page. Have their sample book. Don't have one from 20 years ago from some other lab. That's the case so many times, is they've got one that's so antiquated that it's not even close to what is even offered today. And keeping that nomenclature the same as what your lab is, I think is really important.
Yeah, and I think that the difference that we have in our mind based on what color needs to be on the patient perspective and then what the lab thinks it is. I mean, there'll always, that will never go away. There's always going to be that discrepancy between the two.
And optically, sometimes there's a reason for that. At church, my pastor is certain that our carpet is blue, and I am certain that it's green.
Right.
And
yeah.
sometimes there's an optical reason for that. But
and that's the solution, is to have your set colors. This is what it is. This is what we can offer you, and we know when we get it back, it's going to look exactly like this. That is for sure our tips. Get a sample book. If you can't get a sample book, get a reference sheet. Follow the reference sheet exactly. And if you cannot do that, and it's something outside of the product realm, absolutely send a sample to be matched. And one thing to point out is that Chris and Quantum, they do some absolutely extraordinary things with mirror coatings. They have some really cool projects. Chris, I don't know if you had anything else to add on the actual mirror coating process. What does surprise people is that it's very similar to the AR coating process as well.
Yeah, it's actually almost the exact same thing, except for the software. Instead of trying to transmit all the light, we're trying to reflect it. So we're basically flipping the stack kind of backwards. So The nice part about POG, I was going to make the point, a lot of people shy away from mirrors because sometimes they take a long time to get back. So your patient will order a pair of RX dress wear, and they'll order a sunwear, and they'll get their dress wear back right away from a lot of labs, and their sunwear might take 2 to 3 weeks because they got to send it out, or they only run it once a week, or whatever. The advantage of PLG with Opticoat, you guys run stuff almost every day. You have the best turnaround time for any mirror available, so you can service the patients a lot quicker. They can get both pair of glasses back at the same time, and it's a lot easier for the opticians to dispense eyewear, so they're not constantly calling the patient back.
Chris, do you have to run one batch per color? Like, if you got one red order, that's all you can run?
If you got one red order, if you're not set up to do multiple colors like Opticoat, you either wait till you get more or you send it out. But POG has their own, so that's the nice part. So like something like a silver flash, or some of the standard colors, usually you get back fairly quick. But some of the random colors, you could pick a color. You could say like the Oakley Fire or whatever. Maybe some other labs run it once every 2 weeks or whatever, and the service is really poor. So then the optician gets turned off, so they don't even promote it.
Yeah.
So with POG and Opticoat, you can promote mirrors and be very successful because you're getting back all your RX work at the same time.
Yeah. Well, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I used to be able to, it was a fun thing to do to put either a silver flash or a gold flash on an almost clear lens. And the last several times I've tried that from different labs, they've told me they can't do that. Are they lying to me? Can this be done?
It can be done. So if you don't have a tint, you don't get the pop. So I mean, the mirror is there, but you got to have the base color underneath it to make it pop and to be able to see it.
Right.
Another thing would be a really cool pair of glasses. Sometimes is just have a photochromic and put a silver flash on the top, so you'll have some variability in the nighttime, but it pops in the sun, right? And
I sold a million pairs of long before anybody was selling motorcycle glasses. I ordered a bunch of foam gasketed safety glasses, and I sold them with used to be Zeiss had like a super blue. I'd
cool
sell
blue,
them with cool blue. I'd sell them with cool blue and transitions, and then a little tiny seg at the bottom so they could read a menu when they stopped to get something to eat. And I sold a million pair of those. Everybody loved them.
Yeah, that effect still works. I know we're really good with technology now. We do, the no line bifocal. But anyway, but yeah, so like I said, POG set up for really good service on mirrors where most labs aren't. So you can be confident you can get your stuff back quickly.
So Alex, I can order my 80s looking flash mirror on a clear lens now.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They shouldn't be telling you no.
Well, I hadn't tried it with you. It'd been a long time.
Yeah, there is actual options, mirror options on clear bases that are really, really nice looking and pretty impressive. And there's some, people out there that are a lot cooler than me that get pretty customizable with their eyewear. Right. They'll do drills with clear mirrors, and they turn out really, really cool. But yeah, no, and Opticoat is absolutely set up to run mirrors as fast as absolutely possible. So we're fortunate to have them with us for sure.
Awesome. Well, I don't know if anybody else has anything to add, but it's been great to be a part of this. I love to just geek out on the finer points of the process. I've been out of the processing side for a long time, but I love to hear about it, learn more about it. If you've never taken a lab tour before somewhere, I always recommend doing that. If you got a lab near you, you can do a tour. It's very eye-opening to you. And really great for your career, I think, to do that. Alex, Chris, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, and I think that it kind of you know, points to the fact that we had this training second. I mean, of course, you know, our first training on lens thickness that, you know, is absolutely critical, the biggest misconceptions in the entire optical industry. But, you know, in our mind, putting this second, you know, the reason that we're doing that is because, you know, we think from our perspective and what we're hearing from our customers is that it is continually harder and harder to sell AR, make those added sales. And it's something easy that is right there, that you can do to add sales to your practice and add, you know, an added benefit to your patient. I mean, they are going to see better at the end of the day. We were, you know, talking yesterday about some other countries outside of the United States. I mean, you know, Japan is 100%, you know, 100% of their orders have AR. They literally don't make them without. Europe, I think we said 95% of total orders come with AR. So we really need to flip this industry in the United States to understand that it is an absolute must. We need to leave the past in the past. It has got, you know, the processes have gotten way better. And then on top of that, we need to be educated about the difference in AR. There is not a ton, you know, when we're talking about spin coating. You know, if you want to lower your price, if you want to make higher margin, if you want to lower your price to your customer, consider using in-house AR brands. And of course, if you have any huge projects like putting coatings on telescopes, Chris is your guy for that.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm sending anything to Mars, but me and my kids have been we've been building our own rockets. They're not quite there. I'll call you when they're at that level. But you know, one of the things that I think of is in this day and age, it's just a shame to send an adult out looking like this. I mean, to send an adult patient out of your store who spent $300-400 on a frame or something, do them a service, give them quality eyewear with a scratch coat, with some hydrophobic, easy to clean. You know, I'm assuming that has some kind of warranty as well, Alex.
Right. Yep. And yeah, I mean, not something we hit on, but I mean, there is a life period of AR. You know, it should be lasting 2 years. You know, most labs, honestly, I mean, you know, there shouldn't be any need for any AR warranties, you know, based on how we produce the AR. It just depends on how the patient is treating their glasses.
Right.
So a lot of people, you know, will treat them badly. And luckily, a lot of labs offer a warranty service for free lenses for adding AR. But I mean, really, you know, an AR warranty is us begging you to put it on.
Yeah.
You know, we really only put that there because we really want you to offer it to your patients. And that's the only reason that there is AR warranties in the optical industry. Other than that, they should last 2 years.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you for joining. And again, this will be available on your YouTube channel. Do you want to plug the YouTube channel, Alex?
Yep. Yeah, it is just simply Precision Optical Group, straight on YouTube. If you type it in, you can also look for us on For You Lab Life is the name of the trainings. And then, yeah, we'll be sending material out, including this training. So look for it in your mail and other places as well.
All right. Thank you, everybody.